40 years. That's how long it took this island to go from bare rock to home of the single biggest breeding colony of its kind on the entire planet. The island is called Steeple Jason, and nobody built what's there now. Nobody engineered it. No fortune went into making it happen. You're probably picturing a team of scientists with clipboards and a decade-long restoration plan. Wrong guy entirely. The man who set this whole recovery in motion didn't come from science, not from government, not from a conservation charity. He worked as a builder in the English countryside, and he liked penguins a little too much. His entire plan amounted to doing almost nothing at all. What came back afterward broke every prediction anyone had made. And what's happening on that island right now, in 2026, is a story most retellings stop just short of finishing. So what actually lived on that island before anyone showed up to wreck it? To understand why the damage here ran so deep, we have to go back to 1833, when Charles Darwin stepped onto these islands and met an animal that had never once needed to fear anything on two legs. The Falklands carried exactly one native land mammal through their entire history, a fox-like animal called the Falkland Islands wolf. What struck Darwin wasn't its size or its howl, it was the calm. The wolf walked straight up to sailors, unafraid, curious, the same way a friendly dog trots up to a stranger at a park with no sense that anything could go wrong. It had no instinct telling it that a stranger on two legs might be dangerous. Basically, it filled out its own extinction paperwork and never noticed it was signing anything. Darwin predicted, in writing, that this tameness would be exactly what wiped it out. He was right. Settlers hunted it relentlessly, convinced it threatened their sheep, and by 1876, the last known Falklands wolf was dead. An entire species gone within a few decades of people showing up, because fear never entered its instincts. Most animals learn fear fast once guns show up. This one never lived long enough to learn. That same story, a trusting animal meeting people who feared it, happens again and again on these islands. Was the wolf really the biggest thing these islands lost? Not even close. Along the Falklands coastline grew a grass unlike almost anything else on the planet. Tussock grass could reach 3 meters tall, live for 2 centuries, and grow in clumps thick enough to stand on. Grass is supposed to be scenery. This grass was running the entire coastal ecosystem, sheltering nesting seabirds, holding the soil in place against some of the windiest weather on Earth. And underneath it, that grass was pulling off something scientists are only now fully appreciating. The dirt beneath tussock grass stores carbon faster than almost any similar type of ground anywhere else on Earth. Think of it like a piggy bank nobody ever emptied. 12,000 years. That's roughly how long some of that carbon has been sitting in the ground, since before most of human farming even began. 12,000 years of patience undone by roughly 80 years of sheep with strong appetites and no long-term plan. Scientists studying that dirt today can actually read the island's weather history in its layers, the same way you'd count rings inside a tree, because the grass has been keeping a record of this place since the end of the last ice age. Then, it started disappearing, and the man who would eventually decide to do something about it hadn't even bought his first island yet. What finally broke a system that had survived that long? British settlers brought sheep into the Falklands during the 1860s, and within a couple of decades, wool was carrying the entire territory's economy on its back. Well over 600,000 sheep at the high point were spread across the archipelago. Not villains by nature, just grazers doing what grazers do. But scaled up that large, doing what grazers do turned out to be its own kind of villainy. Tussock grass turned out to be extraordinarily nutritious, which meant it also became the first thing eaten down to nothing. Turns out being the tastiest plant in the neighborhood is a terrible life strategy if you happen to be the plant. 80%. That's how much of the Falklands' original tussock grass had vanished by the 1950s. On the 2 main islands, barely 2% remained standing, and once the grass disappeared, the peat underneath it had nothing left protecting it from the wind. It dried out and cracked, the same way a wet sponge left in the sun turns hard and crumbly, and then it blew straight into the ocean. Here's the part even the original conservationists never tracked closely. Eroded dirt doesn't just blow away and disappear. It settles on the ocean floor, around these damaged islands, sometimes in big amounts, changing the underwater world while everyone's attention stayed fixed on what was happening up on land. One nearby island suffered erosion damage across more than a third of its entire surface. This wasn't a slow, contained problem. It was bleeding straight into the ocean. Who finally looked at all this and decided enough was enough? That was the whole archipelago's story. On one island, at the far northwestern edge of it, the damage went further than almost anywhere else. Steeple Jason, a narrow, cliff-edged ridge at the remote northwestern tip of the archipelago, had never been permanently inhabited by people. It didn't need to be. Up to 5,000 sheep were simply left there to graze, checked on occasionally, sheared when the weather cooperated. Within 20 years, the island's hillsides were scarred with erosion, its grass thinned to almost nothing, its seabirds pushed onto the narrowest strips of coastline the sheep couldn't reach. Then, in 1970, a builder named Leonard Hill heard the island was for sale. Hill wasn't an ecologist. He ran a wildlife park in the English Cotswolds called Birdland. The name is almost insultingly literal, and kept penguins as a personal obsession. 5,500 pounds. That's what he paid for 2 islands in the South Atlantic, genuinely a small sum even at the time. The sheep and cattle that had grazed there for decades had already vanished from the land by the time he took ownership, and he reached a decision that struck the farming community as almost too simple to work. Keep it that way, permanently, and never let anything graze there again. No replanting, no engineered fix, no formal plan of any kind. It sounds like the story should stop there. A rich man's odd charity toward 2 barren rocks nobody else wanted. It doesn't. It hasn't even started. He held to it. Then he waited. Decades later, ownership passed to hedge fund investor Michael Steinhardt, who in 2001 gave both islands outright to the Wildlife Conservation Society, along with enough funding to put a field station on Steeple Jason, which opened its doors in 2003. For the first time, scientists could actually live on the island long enough to measure what Hill's strange experiment had actually accomplished. Did it work? Picture that bare rock from the beginning again. Cracked peat, wind scraping across a hillside with nothing standing more than a few inches tall. That's the island Leonard Hill was staring at when he decided to just walk away from it. At first, almost nothing seemed to change. Tussock roots that had somehow made it through decades of heavy grazing began pushing up new growth, but it was patchy, slow, easy to miss if you weren't looking closely. A visitor in the mid-1970s might have seen barely any difference from 5 years earlier. You'd assume doing nothing means nothing is happening. That's exactly what it looked like from a boat. Underneath the surface, though, something was shifting. The roots were holding the loose dirt together again, the same way a net of tree roots keeps a sandcastle from collapsing when the tide comes in. Water that used to dry up in the wind was staying in the ground, and as the tussock crept back along the coast, the birds that depended on it started reclaiming territory they hadn't touched in a century. It was unfolding underground, one growing season at a time, and almost nobody stood there to notice until the research station finally gave scientists a reason to stay and look. 55,183. That's how many albatross nests researchers counted on the neighboring island in 2006. By 2010, that number had climbed to 89,489, a 62% increase in 5 years. And that was the smaller island. On Steeple Jason itself, the 2010 census turned up something that defied every model anyone had built. 183,135 black-browed albatross nests, counted one by one, spread across 5 kilometers of coastline, packed so tightly the ground itself disappeared under a carpet of birds. Try finding a single empty patch of ground in that count. You won't. The single biggest colony of this species anywhere on the planet, sitting on an island that had been a sheep pasture within living memory. It didn't stop there. Rockhopper penguins settled in right alongside the albatrosses. Gentoo penguins took over the flatter ground lower down. Giant petrels, birds with wingspans over 2 meters, built colonies exceeding 1,500 pairs of their own. The grass came back, the birds followed the grass. The birds' waste fertilized more grass, the same way spreading manure on a garden helps vegetables grow bigger the next season. A cycle that had been running for thousands of years before the sheep interrupted it simply picked back up where it left off. So, case closed, sheep gone, birds back, happy ending? Not quite. One more animal came back first, and its story is almost a direct echo of the wolf from earlier. The striated caracara, known locally as the Johnny Rook, is one of the rarest raptors on Earth and, by some measures, one of the smartest, the kind of problem-solving you'd expect from a parrot, not a bird of prey. Officials labeled the bird vermin in 1908 and started paying out a bounty for everyone killed. Within 17 years, it had been wiped out entirely from the two main islands. The payments didn't stop until 1930. Legal protection didn't actually arrive until 1964. Darwin himself described the species in 1833 as extraordinarily tame and fearless. A century of bounty hunting should have taught this species permanent fear. It didn't take 500 breeding pairs. That's roughly the entire global population of Johnny Rooks left today, and the Jason Islands hold one of the most important strongholds. These birds walk straight up to researchers now. They hop onto boots. They steal shiny objects out of open bags. Officials once put a bounty on this bird's head. Now it's stealing gear out of researchers' backpacks and getting away with it. They never learned to be afraid because on this one stretch of coastline, for the first time in over a century, nothing has given them a reason to. Is that really the whole story? No. Here's where most retellings stop and where the honest version keeps going. You'd think removing the sheep fixed everything. It didn't. Something smaller was still walking around at night, and it never appeared in Leonard Hill's original plan. The sheep are gone. The cattle are gone. But one invasive mammal was never removed from Steeple Jason: house mice. A study published in the journal Polar Biology examined exactly this, comparing Steeple Jason against its mouse-free neighbor, Grand Jason. The result left no ambiguity. Gray-backed storm petrels and Wilson storm petrels, small burrow-nesting seabirds, showed up in far bigger numbers on the island without mice than on the island with them. These birds are so small that a single house mouse can actually kill a chick or eat an egg, something a mouse could never do to a bird the size of an albatross. It's almost insulting. Survive predator extinction, wildfire scale erosion, and a century of sheep, and end up taken down by something that fits in a teacup. Mice don't threaten the albatrosses. They're simply too large. But the smaller burrowing species never reached the full recovery the bigger birds did. The sheep story on Steeple Jason is finished. The mouse story isn't, and as of the most recent research, nobody has fully solved it yet. And the sheep aren't the only unfinished business here either. The ecology isn't the only unfinished part of this story. There's a human side that never fully wrapped up either, and it deserves the same honesty. None of this erases what sheep farming meant to the Falklands. For roughly 140 years, wool built this territory. A sheep still sits on the island's coat of arms. Families on the outer settlements have run flocks for 5 and 6 generations, and for them, this isn't an abstract ecological debate. It's their land, their inheritance, their identity. When conservationists talk about removing livestock to restore habitat, farming families hear something specific, that they are the problem, not the sheep. They're not wrong to hear it that way. There's a strange irony sitting underneath this whole story, one that gets skipped almost every time it's told. The very dirt these sheep spent a century destroying might finally pay these farming families back. Since 2023, a research project funded by the UK government has been measuring exactly how much carbon Falklands peatlands actually hold, and whether restored tussock grassland could someday earn something called carbon credits. Payments companies issue to protect land instead of farming it, a bit like a landlord paying you not to touch a room in the house because it's worth more left exactly as it is. That means real money tied not to raising sheep, but to keeping the land the way it is. Scientists are drilling into the dirt, measuring gases rising from different patches of ground, and comparing healthy tussock against badly damaged rangeland to see exactly how much carbon each type of land is holding onto or losing. Early findings show these wet areas drying out faster than expected. Ponds that should hold water all year are showing up empty in recent surveys. If the carbon research works out, it could hand farming families an option nobody had on the table when Leonard Hill reached his strange decision back in 1970. A way to earn a living from the land without needing sheep on it at all. So, after all of that, was it worth it? Go back to that image from the beginning. Bare rock, cracked peat, a hillside stripped down to nothing. Now compare it to an island that anchors a network holding roughly 70% of an entire species' global population, spread across just a handful of islands at the edge of the world. 5,500 pounds and the patience to wait several decades. That's the entire cost of making this happen. Nothing was engineered. Nature already had everything it needed. It just needed the obstacle removed. This isn't a finished story, though, and pretending otherwise would be dishonest. Mice are still working through the smaller seabird colonies. The carbon research that could reshape the farming economy here is still years from an answer. And in the 2023 and 2024 breeding seasons, researchers were actively testing birds on the Jason Islands for bird flu, a disease that, on an island holding this much of one species' global population in a single place, could undo decades of recovery in a single outbreak. So far, nothing has been found there. So far, if the cheapest, most effective way to save a collapsing ecosystem is simply to remove ourselves from it, why are we still so obsessed with engineering the fix? Next time, we go the other direction entirely. An island where people didn't remove a grazer, they put a predator back after 70 years of silence, and nobody was prepared for how fast the wetland remembered what to do with it. This is Hidden Latitude. We go back for the parts of the story everyone else called finished too soon.